So a shout out to the arts as well, but I do like my football. So it's great, being a mother of 5 has taught me a lot. And serving in the state of Illinois in the legislature under Mike Madigan has taught me quite a bit. So it's great to be here at the American Legion, a place that I feel at home with as a veteran. And I just want to say, shout out to all the parents. This is a little bit different, but a shout out to all the parents and grandparents who still encourage their children and their grandchildren to enter the service in the military. We appreciate you, we need you, and thank you for doing that. But good afternoon, and before I get to my primary purpose for being here today, I want to set the stage for 2022. The indictment of Mike Madigan yesterday by federal prosecutors on 22 counts, including bribery and racketeering, is turning this year into what should be the most consequential year for Illinois in a half-century. It is a chance to kick the go-along, get-along politicians on both sides of the aisle out of office. It's a chance to say goodbye to the state legislators who doubled your gas taxes, who let the governor shut business down with no input from the legislative branch, who made your kids stare at a screen all day and called it school, who took billions in COVID money from federal taxpayers and then said they balanced the budget, who passed laws making streets a haven for criminals, and who wasted truckloads of your money allowing millions in unemployment fraud and stolen identities to occur. And that's just a small list of grievances which should inform voters this year. This indictment should be just the start of ridding this state of the machine politicians who have fiscally and morally bankrupted this state. We will get to the fiscal disaster, but on the moral front, Illinois state government has sunk to the lowest levels of depravity. Taxpayer-funded abortion on demand up to birth. Parents left out of serious medical decisions for their minor children, telling little girls in pigtails they can become a boy if they want to, and telling white teachers they are oppressing black students is just some of the filth being shoved onto the honest, God-fearing people in this state. Back to the Madigan indictment. It is an indictment of the entirety of the Democrat Party in Illinois, a party Madigan alone was allowed to control. Madigan did all the heavy lifting and made all the decisions. He ran the campaigns and they fell in line. Every important Democrat holding public office in Illinois right now is there because Mike Madigan put them there. That includes the entirety of the General Assembly and Governor J.B. Pritzker. Madigan raised the money from his crony union friends and rent-seeking corporations to fund their campaigns where they lied about their opponents or policy or both. Any member who crossed him or didn't vote for him was denied the engraved clock or presented with a primary opponent. His members enabled the corruption, and his reign only ended when the federal prosecutors came knocking, and not because of any courageous member in his caucus. While Madigan is being prosecuted for corruption, he should also be prosecuted for Illinois earning the title of the worst-run state in the union. Today, Illinois stands as the bad example of public policy after decades of politicians lied to voters and those voters kept politicians in office either because they had benefited from the crony deals or they were oblivious to it. Regardless, we are the case study in how to economically ruin a state that has every natural advantage that others would love to have. Instead, Illinois is an outlier in every imaginable category. When Governor Pritzker takes credit for the state's credit rating moving up one notch, he fails to tell voters we still have the worst credit rating in the nation and no other state is even close. Or that the only way that it improved was because of federal COVID relief money. Illinois ranks at the bottom of every list of key economic indicators, the most debt, the lowest job growth in the Midwest, and the highest overall tax burden. And since politics is about people, the biggest indictment of the system is that Illinois ranks as one of the worst in the nation for providing services to persons with developmental and intellectual disabilities. Those families and nonprofits who provide for them have been lied to over and over. All of the above is why over 650,000 people walked out of Illinois along with an aggregate of $137 billion in adjusted gross income in the last decade. But this year is the year Illinois voters can change the direction of this state. This year, voters can choose a conservative reformer with the experience at the local and state level to lead this state so that families stop being the ATM for the bureaucracy or subjected to tyranny by the executive branch. This year, voters can choose a leader who has the humility to know he doesn't have all the answers, but respects all parties enough to have meaningful conversations and engage them in meaningful debate in order to resolve our problems together. It is a process Mike Madigan and J.B. Pritzker never believed in, as evidenced by 24 continuous months of Pritzker emergency orders. He wins the sash. Pritzker's record for lockdowns, mandates, and hypocrisy as it relates to COVID is on par with California and New York governors. But considering we are supposed to be a state with Midwestern values, his record is even therefore worse. But we can vote in new leadership that respects individual rights. This year, voters can vote for someone who has already exhibited the courage to lead in the face of ridicule by the political class, including those in his own party. I know the Republican candidates running for governor. There are good men running for this office on the Republican side. But when leadership was demanded against a one-man government in Pritzker, there was only a one-man response in Darren Bailey. For his courage and experience, I wholeheartedly endorse Darren Bailey for governor. Darren Bailey is a third-generation family farmer. He and his wife Cindy and their 4 children farm over 12,000 acres where they grow corn, wheat, and soybeans. As if that isn't enough work, they also operate a trucking and an excavation business and oversee 2 Christian schools which they founded. As someone who comes from a farming family, my grandparents were dairy farmers in Nebraska, and I worked on my uncle's farms in South Dakota growing up. I know of the skills required to successfully farm today, including understanding financial markets, technology, mechanics, plant science, tax policy, transportation, employment and environmental laws, and a myriad of other disciplines, all involved in just farming. But just having the experience in the agricultural field, which I love to remind people, is the top industry in Illinois, isn't the only reason that I endorse Darren Bailey for governor. In 2017, after surrender Republicans voted for a 32% permanent tax increase, Darren took on a member of his own party who voted for that tax increase. It wasn't easy for Darren to drop everything and run for election, but he did. Now there are others in this race for governor who could have done the same thing and taken on establishment politicians and gotten out of their comfort zone, but they didn't. Now they believe they are ready to be governor when some of them, not all though, some of them have no depth of knowledge on the fiscal problems in Illinois and the systems that created these problems. They think they can learn on the job when they get into office, or hire MBA graduates to manage the state. Like solving Illinois problems is a McKinsey case study. I assure you, all the bills that would improve our state have already been filed. It's just that the Democrats refuse to consider them, and so do some of the Republicans. Now, there are candidates in this race that could have run against powerful Democrats for, years ago for a legislative race in order to change the trajectory of Illinois, but they didn't. There are candidates in this race with law degrees that could have litigated Pritzker's lockdown orders, but they didn't. One of them, Richard Irving, mayor of Aurora, the second largest city in the state, had a bully pulpit to do so, and instead, Irvin praised Pritzker's lockdowns and threatened his local businesses if they violated Pritzker's orders. Darren is the only conservative reformer in this race with a record to stand on. No one else challenged the governor's authority to alone make all the decisions that impacted schools, churches, and businesses in Illinois. In May 2020, only Darren Bailey stood his ground against yet another one of Governor Pritzker's 30-day extensions of emergency rules. Others could have stood with Bailey, but they didn't. The only reason children are unmasked today in school is because Darren challenged the governor's illegal mask mandate, and he found Tom DeVore to take the case along with him. Here's an important part of that story that should inform Republican voters in this primary race. In May of 2020, the state legislature had no choice but to vote in person to pass a budget and tidy up unfinished business that got stalled when the 2 weeks to slow the curve lockdown began. By this time, Governor Pritzker was on his second or third 30-day emergency order and mask mandate. Knowing that the governor's authority to universally continue to violate due process and common sense, and that his order was most likely unconstitutional, Darren Bailey decided to challenge the mask mandate when session began. After roll call, Republicans called for a caucus meeting to discuss the mask situation. In that meeting, Avery Bourne, Richard Irvin's running mate, hysterically yelled at Darren to just put on your blanking mask. Now she's running with Irving, and they both are pretending that they stood up to the governor on COVID rules when the opposite is true. In that regard, Republican voters need to be warned. The same people who ran Rauner's campaign backed by $1 billion checkbook are now running the Irving-Bourne race backed by the same $1 billion checkbook. And just like those political hacks lied about me in 2018, they are lying about Darren Bailey in 2022. The truth is, Richard Irving and Avery Bourne just may be both Madigan and Pritzker's favorite Republicans. After all, in Pritzker's first session in 2019, Avery Bourne gave the new governor and the unions exactly what they wanted, a $45 billion infrastructure bill backed up by numerous tax and fee hikes, including a doubling of the gas tax, which Bourne voted for. She also sponsored a bill, according to a recent Chicago Tribune report, that a Democrat refused to sponsor that would have benefited Mike Madigan's shakedown scheme of a builder in Chicago. Irving and Bourne are saying that all lives matter when the truth is Irving supported the Black Lives Movement in Aurora. Bourne and Irving are saying they're a pro-life ticket when Irving is pictured with smiling Planned Parenthood supporters and refused to answer basic questions about the topic. The Irving-Bourne campaign cannot be trusted. Republican establishment candidates and organizations are no doubt endorsing the campaign in hopes of financial campaign support, just like Rauner did to get people to endorse him in 2018. Victory for Illinois families and Illinois businesses is going to depend on voters not being sucked into believing attack ads with half-truths and no context. The numerous indictments of top Democrat officials in just the last 4 years should wake up voters. Voters must read past the talking points and the lies put out by campaigns and make better choices in politicians if we are to have a chance of making this state look more like Indiana than California. Many people who were lifelong Illinoisans have unfortunately fled this state in recent years. They eventually decided they didn't like paying a premium to fund second-rate services and other people's retirements. And then there are good people that don't want to leave and cannot leave. Their lives and their livelihoods are rooted in their communities, the land, and their family that is still here. Darren Bailey and his wife Cindy, along with their running mate Stephanie Trussell and her husband Bill, who are also small business owners, are people who are here to stay. And they are people that I trust to make the right decisions and not lose their way among the special interests and the bureaucracy. They understand that we owe it to our ancestors and our progeny to right the wrongs and retake our place as a beacon for industry and a defender of liberty. We have the opportunity to do the right thing this year, and I ask you to join me in supporting the Bailey-Trussell ticket for governor and lieutenant governor in Illinois in 2022. Thank you.